Over 5,000 colonists and 238 crew members are being transported by the Starship Avalon to the planet Homestead 2, a journey that takes 120 years. After the collapse of Earth's biosphere and a mass exodus of its population, due to ecocide, what's left of humanity are in hibernation pods, but as the ship passes through a large asteroid field, its energy shield is heavily strained against an incoming stream of space debris which causes a malfunction, as one of the large pieces of debris penetrates the energy shield, colliding with an unknown part of the Starship Avalon, awakening one passenger, Jim Preston, 90 years earlier than his scheduled awakening time. The passengers were programmed to awaken during the final approach to Homestead 2, just 4 months before reaching their destination. Jim Preston, who is also a mechanical engineer, scours the ship and realizes that he is the only one awake in the entire vessel, having woken up too soon. He is able to eat, drink, and perform other activities on board the ship with the help of an ID badge. His ID badge is of a low-level worker, giving him limited access to very few areas of the ship. When Jim finds the bridge, he's unable to gain entry as it requires a special authorization. He also discovers that any messages to Earth will take 19 years, and earliest response is expected in 55 years. He has access to pre-recorded messages of guides on the spaceship.
The ID band on your wrist is your key to the wonders of the Avalon. Please scan your ID to confirm luggage delivery.
Can I help you?
I need to talk to a person.
Bridge access requires special authorization.
Where is everybody?
We're in transit from Earth to Homestead 2.
I woke up too soon. Way too soon.
After spending days alone on board the vessel, Jim wants to go back to sleep, but is unable to. He finds the engineering manual for the hibernation pod and attempts to fix it to no avail. Jim tries to break into the bridge, but the entry door is heavily fortified. In a different section of the ship, he finds Arthur, an android bartender whom he is relieved to find at least something close to a human to interact with. After 1 year of isolation spent playing video games, basketball, dance-off with no company except for Arthur, Jim begins to contemplate committing suicide by opening the space dock airlock without wearing a spacesuit. He, however, is afraid of dying. One day, he notices the beautiful Aurora Lane in her pod, and her video profile reveals she is a writer with a humorous personality. Jim begins struggling with the possibility and morality behind manually reviving Aurora for the sake of companionship. He even discusses it with Arthur, who thinks it's a brilliant idea. Jim eventually and intentionally awakens Aurora and escapes the area. With his heart racing like crazy, he approaches her hours later, claiming her pod malfunctioned like his. She discovers that Jim has been awake for more than a year now, as he explains all the things he had tried to rectify his situation. Aurora, realizing she may grow old and die before the ship arrives, Homestead 2, panics and attempts a fruitless effort at re-entering hibernation just as Jim tried, but she is unable to. Though devastated, she refuses to give up.
We will arrive in approximately 89 years.
Stop! It doesn't matter. Putting somebody into hibernation requires special equipment.
Jim pays a visit to Arthur yet again and informs him that Aurora is awake. He pleads with the robot to not tell her that he woke her up from hibernation. Aurora happens to be a high-level passenger on board the ship and has access to better food, luxury, and more, which she shares with Jim. With time, she accepts her situation and begins to write a book about her experiences, which at first was all about her. Then gradually, Jim and Aurora grow closer, and he begins to do everything with her, which prior to now he did alone. The duo make the most of their time on the luxury ship, even taking space excursions together and engaging in other fun activities. Being a gold-class passenger, she shares her access to numerous amenities with Jim, who never had such access to better coffee and swimming pool. She tells him that colony planets are huge businesses, and that Homestead Company made $8 quadrillion from its first colony planet, and that it gets 20% off everything a colonist makes in their lifetime on the new planet. With time, Jim takes Aurora on a casual date where he introduces her to Arthur, the robot bartender. Over the next year, they fall in love. Jim enjoys his moments with Aurora, and they go on a proper date this time, all dressed up to slay. During the outing, he asked about the progress of her book, and she tells him a story of how she had a heart attack when she was 17. Passion sets in after a space excursion together, and they make love and can't seem to get enough of each other. She introduces Jim in her book, calling the relationship an accidental happiness. In all these beautiful moments, Jim never discloses how Aurora came to be with him. The two proceed to the viewing area where the Avalon slingshots around the star Arcturus. It is an incredible sight, so breathtaking yet unbelievable. On Aurora's birthday, while celebrating with her, he excuses himself and goes to get a ring, intending to propose to Aurora, but inadvertently allows Arthur reveal the truth to her. On his return, she is heartbroken, distraught, alternately berating, shunning, and even physically attacking Jim with so much hatred in her eyes. All this time, the malfunction on the ship has been growing. Their once blissful relationship turns sour, and she can't stand the sight of Jim. She wants to kill him for being a monster, but can't bring herself to do it. They become alone once more, despite the presence of each other on the ship. He would broadcast a message of his true feelings to her, but she will respond with so much hatred. She accuses him of taking her life when in fact she is alive because of him. One day, she finds a tree on the ship which Jim miraculously grew within a short time to please her. The duo hear a voice asking who planted a tree on the ship. It turns out to be Gus, a chief deck officer who had woken up due to another pod failure. Using Gus's personal code, they access the ship's bridge, discovering multiple cascading failures throughout the ship's systems. But the computer does not reveal the cause. According to Gus, if left unattended, the ship will fail, causing the passengers and crew to perish. Gus goes down to the hibernation bay where he discovers that Jim awakened Aurora, who still blames him for stealing her life, claiming it's tantamount to murder. Gus does not condone Jim's actions, but understands that a drowning man will grab onto any lifeline. Gus is critically ill and is told to go and rest. Aurora goes to take a swim, and due to a temporary loss of gravity, she gets trapped in the swimming pool while the sleeping Jim floats, unaware of the situation. Aurora almost drowns while both men continue sleeping, until Jim notices the gravity drive and restores it just in time. Moments later, Gus discovers a power surge which caused 17 cascade failures in one day, including his hibernation pod failure. This leaves them stranded on a sinking ship. Gus collapses and is immediately taken to the ship's automated medical suite, where he's diagnosed of a progressive organ failure. 612 disorders are found in his system, and it's clear that Gus won't make it past a couple of hours. Gus instructs Jim to fix the ship. He gives Jim and Aurora his ID badge and employee code to access crew-only areas for this purpose. Arthur is seen malfunctioning, and Jim is able to shut it down. The duo arrive at the main engineering compartment, where they encounter hull breaches from the asteroid collision 2 years earlier. With dwindling oxygen levels, Jim is able to secure all doors and pressure is normalized. They find a hole in the ship near the fusion reactor. The computer module administering the ship's fusion reactor power plant has been critically damaged due to the asteroid strike, causing the cascading malfunctions as the other systems. Computing power was diverted in an attempt to maintain it. They are able to replace the damaged module, but when the computer attempts to vent the reactor to extinguish a runway plasma reaction, the exterior vent fails. Jim is forced to spacewalk and vent the plasma from outside, using the manual control and a vent tube. Now trapped as the doors won't open, he discovers that he must remain in the tube to keep the vent open, while Aurora initiates venting from inside of the ship. In this moment, knowing he might not survive, she admits she is terrified of losing him and being left all alone. Jim motivates her to initiate the sequence, improvising using a heat shield to protect himself, but is blasted out into space as his tether snaps, and his damaged spacesuit begins to lose oxygen. Aurora quickly makes a long space dive and is able to grab onto Jim, placing him inside the autodock, which unfortunately declares him clinically dead. She commands the autodock to resuscitate Jim, but it refuses due to lack of medical clearance, so she uses Gus's ID badge to override the autodock, and Jim is immediately operated on and resuscitated. Aurora is incredibly happy to have him back. With its reactor repaired, the Avalon returns to its normal operations. After burying Gus in space, Jim learns that the autodock can function as a hibernation pod for one person, and he insists that Aurora uses it for the remainder of the voyage, but realizing that she would never see him again, she chooses to remain awake with him. Jim brings out the makeshift engagement ring he made earlier, and proposes to Aurora, and she accepts. 88 years later, the ship arrives Homestead 2 and the ship's crew and passengers awaken on schedule, discovering a gigantic tree with trailing vines, lush vegetation, flying birds, and a small cabin in the ship's grand concourse. A recording of Aurora's story narrates the wonderful life she shared with Jim on board the Avalon. This is Falcon Recaps. Thanks for watching.
I'll wait.
Hell of a life.
A beautiful life.